Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Besides Amber and Marianne, who else is on this call?
Stacya's on this call, and
Brendan, is this transition call for caregivers and grief and bereavement also? Did you send the invite out to them?
That's who. Yeah, this is just to finish up the transition, because when we were doing transition training last time, we run into a roadblock and couldn't show the care needs and the scheduling portion of it and how to document a visit. So yeah, this is basically just finishing up the grief and bereavement and caregiver transition. So all I'm going to go over is care needs, scheduling, and entering a service note, which we will cover again in the later trainings, but I always usually cover this in transition as well. So if you guys can start getting started on some of this stuff, you know, as soon as you're ready for those transition patients.
Terrific.
So basically, is everybody here? I see John made it. It looks like everybody's here. Can we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody's on that should be on.
Okay.
I'm on.
Stacia, is Anna with you?
yes, Anna's with me, but just to make note, she didn't get an invite. Did
Okay.
you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I made a note of that. We'll make sure next time.
Okay. Well, this will probably be a short meeting, but we can use the rest of the time to answer any other additional questions you guys have as well. So I'm going to just pick up where we left off that last time as far as adding the care needs. And again, this is going to be basically the same for the caregivers, or grief and bereavement and the caregivers. So since they're not going to have orders required, the orders tab is going to just be set up to have a care needs placeholder, which kind of looks like an order, but it's really not. It says signature not required, but we just have to have a placeholder to add this care need order, which is not really an order in this case. And the home health side and hospice side, it would be part of your orders, but in this side, all it does is put patient-specific interventions or tasks inside of their service notes. And we've already set that up for the caregivers. So let me get signed back in. So to add a care need, you just click on the Add Care Need link above the orders once you have your placeholder in place. And then you're going to do the effective date. The effective date doesn't matter on these since it's not a true order as much as it does anything else, but it needs to be, the effective date is basically going to be when are these going to start pulling into the notes. So you can backdate it or whatever you need to do so that they'll be available as of the go live date. But then just hit save, and then it's going to bring you into this care needs order, and they're going to choose add multiple care needs, whoever's going to set this up for those caregivers. And again, you'll need to enter the effective date and your discipline. Now, the caregivers are set up under the PCAR. Where is it at? Oh, it's already on it. The PCAR discipline is what it's going to be listed under. And then you'll just scroll down to the Livingston, and we can rename this if you guys want to, but I've named it Livingston Caregivers Plan of Care for now. So click on that. You do not need to worry about a level. These would need to be set up in your settings.
Can I ask you a quick question? What would be the grief and bereavement discipline?
I'm sorry, what?
What would be the for the town department, the grief and bereavement the discipline there? What would we be
getting a lot of feedback. Now, you guys have the option to, and hold on, I'm going to mute you for a minute. There you go. It was getting a lot of feedback. I'm going to show you this option that we've already set it up for the caregivers. Now, you guys, we would be able to set these up for you, the grief and bereavement as well, if you want those task actions to be pulled into your notes. I'm working on your the 3 notes that you sent already. Pretty much done with the first one. I just got interrupted yesterday when I was working on it, so I'll get that finished up today. But on the treatment plan, this would work for you guys as well as for the treatment plan. And what it would be is we could put all of your potential interventions and your goals for your patients in the settings, just like we did for the caregivers. And then you guys can add this so it pulls that patient-specific information into the note. I don't know if that's going to work 100% for you because I don't know. I mean, it looks like the form you sent me, just you freehand in your interventions and goals. And this tree, this would be where you do a home health aid plan of care for the home health side as well. But I'll go over that part again in the trainings later down the road, so we'll cover that again for the home health side. So let me show you how this works, and then you can tell me if it's something that would be useful for you. I think it would be, but we would just need to kind of, and if it is, we would need a list of what your potential interventions and goals would be and what we would label those care needs. But it basically just pulls patient-specific tasks or interventions. That word is synonymous with the care needs. And then goals if those goals are needed. Now, usually with caregivers, home health aides, they won't see goals inside their notes. They'll just see the tasks that they're supposed to perform. Okay, so back on track real quick on this. So on the levels, there is an ability to assign levels, priority levels in the settings. There is nothing from base, but some agencies use this to clarify if this is a high priority, medium, or low priority. And if you guys want to label these as that way when they're in their home, taking care of the patients, they can take care of those high priority ones first and then work their way down the list. And if they have time, hopefully complete them all. But if not, at least they got the high priority ones out of the way. So that's kind of how that works, but you don't have to choose that. And it would need to be set up if you guys wanted to use that. So you'll just hit save after you get that care need in here. And then what you'll have to do next is do add interventions. And if it's, on the home health side, you'll add goals to those interventions as well. But for the caregivers, you wouldn't need to do that. So you're going to click on Add Intervention. And then these are the interventions that we have tied to the Livingston Caregivers Plan of Care. So you would just check what you want them to do for your patient, any and all that may apply. And then you can put a start date in here. But again, you don't have to. It's going to default to the effective date of the actual care need order. But if it was something that you weren't going to do, for the first 2 weeks, maybe you're going to do something, and then after 2 weeks you're going to change to something else, you could future date a start date for a different task, and that's helpful in nursing and things like that for the other sides. Your caregivers may not need to do that, but you do have that option. Again, you can just leave it blank if it doesn't apply. And then hit save. and then you're going to have your tasks right here. Now, all you really need to do is save and close the order. You do need to pick a clinician here. And to approve this, you would eventually need them to sign it as well. But again, since it doesn't go out, it's not really that required for the caregiver side. So I'm going to save and close that. And now I'm going to switch gears real quick to the scheduling portion. So for the grief and bereavement, this is one option that we have that we were kind of emailing a little bit about that, the differences between setting it up as a service that we would put and plot inside of an order basically versus, a pay only, which we plot directly on the patient calendar, or a service is requested. So there's two different types of scheduling in your grief and bereavement and your caregiver side. For home health side, they're going to do it through their 485, so it's a totally different version of scheduling. The differences is with the pay onlys versus the services requested is that we could put values of how much you guys do write off every year. It would be attached to a charity payer so that you could see everything that you guys write off, and that's been valuable for other agencies for tax write-offs to show the state what they've provided. Just whatever reasons and I know Molly, you said something about marketing as well. It would be helpful and I think more beneficial in my eyes to use the services requested. It's a little bit easier, and you can plot visits all the way throughout the whole episode or whatever you guys need to do. But I'll show you both ways, and you guys tell me what would work best.
So, for the services requested, can we still attach it to the charity payer?
Yes. What
Great.
we would do is on those patients, we would have the charity payer added to the payer tab, and then everything's when you schedule the services, it's only going to allow you to schedule for what payers are under the payers tab. And that being said, it only allows you to choose the service codes that payer provides. So it will help keep everybody straight and on the same page as long as they have the correct payer in there first, then you're going to be good to go. In fact, you have to have the payer in there first so we know what rules to follow for scheduling. Of course, some services require authorization, some don't, so it just kind of depends on how those payer rules are set up. Of course, charity, you wouldn't need that.
Right, so it would just be open for any service and any scheduling. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. So for the caregivers, this is definitely how you're going to do it, and potentially for grief and bereavement. So you'll choose Add Service. You're going to get a little pop-up that's asking you when the scheduled start date is. It usually defaults to the day that you're adding this, but you can backdate that if you needed to as well. You don't have to put an end date in here, but I highly recommend it because otherwise it basically leaves this scheduling wide open for, I think it goes all the way up to 2079. And basically the only problem with that is that's an extremely large amount of visits to plot on a schedule and then to go in there and assign them. It's excruciating, and it slows down the system quite a bit. So I do recommend going ahead and just kind of doing a few months. You can do 6 months at a time. You can do a year, but just probably limit it, so you don't have any issues. So I'll just do 6 months. I'll just say through June 30th of 21. Now, you do have the opportunity to add scheduled times for a time in and a time out. So if you have, this is very helpful if you have more than one visit on the same day. If you don't have the visit on the same day, it doesn't necessarily matter. Now, when they go to document in their service note, they're still going to have to put their actual time in and their actual time out. But this is more of just a scheduled time in. So if you have an AM visit and then a PM visit, you could put in the 8 a.m. through noon or whatever it may be here. But again, it's not required. And then, you know, you could pick the payer that you have. Of course, you're only going to have the whatever's available on the payers tab. So typically, you're only going to have the one payer to choose from, and it will default to that. And on the services, only the services that are covered under that payer are going to show up in there. So right now, we just have these ones. So you pick the appropriate service code that you want to add, and then you're going to pick the days of the week that you want to add those. So if you're going Monday through Friday, you'd pick Monday through Friday. You can choose to do it every other week if you wanted to. And then you can add a service description information here, but that is not needed as well. You can hit save and add if you have additional visits you want to plot for the clinicians, or you can hit save and close if you're done with this. We'll just hit save and close for a second, and I'll show you. So see, now I got my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's going to start on January 1st of 21, and then it's going to end on 6/30 of 21. And then I just went ahead and threw that scheduled time in there just to show you how that looks. If you need to plot more than one visit on a day, on the same day, you would have to go back and do this twice. So you'd have to come back and hit add service again, go ahead and add your visits, your date range here. Again, you can use time in, time out if needed. Pick the correct service code, and then those days again. So what this will end up doing is putting another set of visits on top of the same days we already just did. So we'll end up with 2 visits on all of those days. If any of this,
real quick,
yeah. Go ahead.
Tree had a question in the chat. So what information would we typically add in the service description box?
Honestly, I don't know any agency that uses that information, anything
Okay.
there. So, I mean, I'd just leave it blank. It's not required for anything. The service codes are what they're going to see, and those are what matters the most. And then, of course, then we'll assign those to those clinicians, and all they'll see is that visit on their calendar to end up being able to add their documents to. And as far as putting in an end date, you don't have to, but I just kind of recommend you limit it to probably at least 1 year at a time. And that, again, that just goes back to it almost bogging down the system if you have, because it literally will plot all the way out to 2079, and it's just bogs down the system. So I do recommend just shortening that to at least 6 months to a year. We've had agencies that do a lot of scheduling through this, and they've found that, I mean, it's just almost impossible sometimes. And then when you try to make corrections, it's just kind of hard to do. Now, if this does end, like if you were going Monday through Friday and now you want this to change, you could come in here and go ahead and put an end date in here as of the date of change, and then add another services requested with your new frequency and duration in there, with the start date, effective the same day or the day after that end date, so that you can just keep managing schedules, continuously throughout the whole process.
Brendan?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I have a question. Let's say this particular client wants 12-hour shifts on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but on Tuesday, Thursdays, they only want a 4-hour shift. So would you start and end date the 12-hour shift? And then,
yeah,
I mean,
you would
that?
just put the 12-hour shift in, Monday through Wednesday, and then you'll add another services requested with the different service code if it's a different one, for that Thursday and Friday. So you just go back in here, and adjust your dates as needed, and then you come down here, pick the different service code that it needs to be, and then you'd add those dates. So for just the Thursdays and Fridays.
So the Monday one would have started on the scheduled start date for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'd pick the Monday, and you'd do the end date, let's say 6 months out. and you just do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then you do another scheduled start date of Tuesday, let's say, because it's Tuesday, Thursday. And then you do an end date of 6 months out, and then you just put in the 6-hour shift, and you'd plot it Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Exactly.
Okay. And I just had I was distracted for a second. When you explained the start time and end time, we have 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. I thought you said you didn't really have to put something there, but you did.
You don't.
I just want to, is that true? Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, you don't have to. Now, anywhere in Care Efficient where you see these little orange asterisks, that's the bare minimum we need. So we don't have to have an end date, but I recommend it. You don't have to use the time in and time out, but it does help when you have more than one visit in a day. It definitely helps. Or if they are required to be there, in the morning versus the evening, this could be very helpful. So a lot of agencies.
Confused is because you put 4 hours, 8 to 12, but then you gave them a 12-hour shift, and I was thinking.
Oh yeah, I was just picking codes. I'm sorry. I was just throwing codes in there. I'm not very familiar with the different kinds of. I see you've got quite a few codes in there, so I'm not exactly sure which ones you guys need. But I was just throwing it in there. But yeah, that's exactly what you would do. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, I didn't mean to even do that.
Hey, Brendan, can I ask you a question? It's Stacia. We don't schedule services. The counselors call the client, and do we have to have a Monday through Saturday check mark?
No. In those cases, for that scenario, you could just come in here and add a single service. You can add it for, today's date, and today's Wednesday. You would be able to come in here and pick. Right,
but they see them weekly, but they may, the date may change depending upon the client. What I'm asking is, in order for this to get activated, do you have to indicate days of service, or can that stay blank?
No, you do have to indicate. Now, this is a little bit confusing with Care Efficient, compared to some of the other programs. We just want to know what day to put it on initially. You can drag and drop and move these visits all you want. Typically only going 1 day a week. You would, plot it on whatever day you would want to aim for, and then just drag and drop that visit to the correct day that you guys want. So let me show you. No problem. So we're pretty much done with this part. This is, that's how you're going to add your services. And again, just you'll add as many as you need to. You can end date things as soon as things change, just by clicking on those edit buttons. You can do anything you guys need to do. You can come in here, and if you want to add a service time and you didn't have it, actually you wouldn't be able to do that. Or did I click? Yeah, that's only the resolution to make changes to that. So, excuse me. These are actually to cancel services, so we don't want to do that right now. All right, so let's move over to the actual scheduling portion. So we plotted the visits on the calendar, but we did not assign them to any clinicians or caregivers or anybody, so we need to do that part next. So we're going to go to the scheduling link up at the top by the patient's name. And this may be, I don't know if you guys are going to specifically do your own scheduling or if you're going to have a scheduler do this for you. But all they do, let me do one thing real fast. In order to provide these services, we do have to have a pay rate for all those services under each clinician. That's a okay. So even if it's a zero rate, but of course, if you ended up wanting to keep track of this information for accurate payroll records, you would want to go ahead and put the actual pay rate for that staff member. Just while I'm here, I know this isn't something that you guys are all going to do, but if you do hit allow override, when you verify the service, you will be able to adjust those rates if you ever needed to. But I know you guys aren't going to Need that. Okay, so now I'm going to log back in as a clinical trainer and go back to that patient. Okay, now we need to go to the schedule, and now you can see that associate is showing up to be able to provide these services. So there's two ways you can schedule a visit. You can click on a visit one at a time and choose edit, and then you do have the opportunity at this point to change the service code if needed, and then you can just go ahead and put a checkbox next to that clinician or associate that's going to perform that service, and then just hit save. That, of course, would take forever if you have dozens of services on here. And most agencies, clinicians and patients and clients like continuity of care. They like the same patients in there or same clinicians in there with the same patients. So most of the time you're going to assign multiple visits to the same clinician. So the easiest way to do that is to come over here. You may have to choose the discipline from this drop-down. It's typically going to default to whatever unassigned services you have here, but you may have to switch it. There's a calendar here next to every clinician's name. It's going to have a green plus little icon next to it, and then there's one with a red minus. The one with the green plus is mass assign. So I can assign every visit that I have a checkbox next to this clinician all at the same time. You have other options in here as well. If you do use those scheduled times, you can put those service times in here, and it'll filter down to just those, 8 to 12 visits or whatever, if you use those service times. If you just, if you're going to have one associate go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you're going to have a different one for Fridays and Saturdays, you can filter down to anything you want. You can filter date ranges up here. You can filter to days of the week. And then you can filter to, of course, those scheduled times. And when you hit search, down here in this little box, you'll see that it filters it down under the DOW is days of week. It's going to filter it down to those days that I have filtered up here. So I can do just my Monday through Fridays. I could do my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, whatever it is that I want to do, any kind of combination of those. And then I can assign those just by hitting save. And then all I had was Monday through Friday visits. So all of these are going to end up being scheduled to that same clinician. And you can see how kind of, even with the 6 months, see how it kind of takes a second for this to spin. When you do the mass assign, it always takes a second to do it because it's doing it to every one of those visits. The more you have, the longer this part right here will take. So I did 6 months worth of visits, 2 times a day for, 5 days a week. So it's quite a few visits. Let's just give it a second here. Okay, so there you go. So now you have all of them assigned to that clinician all the way through. So that'll give you the ability to do mass scheduling. Now the calendar with the red minus is mass unassigned. Sometimes that's valuable if you have somebody that maybe they're going to go on maternity leave for 6 weeks or something like that. You can go in there and unassign all of their visits for that date range. And once you get them unassigned, then you can go to the new clinician and get them all in there. Let me just show you real quick. So if you hit that red minus, all of those services that are assigned to the same clinician are going to show up. Now, if there's like anything attached to those services, like they've already been documented on. So if there's a service note attached or the visit's been verified, anything like that, it will remove the check mark and gray this out and says it basically is going to tell you you cannot unschedule this one unless you remove that service note and things like that. But otherwise, any of these that are checked, you can go ahead and unassign those. So you can just pick which ones you
Brendan,
want to unasign.
can I ask you a quick question? So if we have
Sure.
a situation where a counselor is leaving and a case needs to be transferred to another counselor, is this where we would do that?
Yeah, if you're just switching from one counselor to another, yeah, as long as
Okay, and then they would then have access to those charts to be able to then go in where they wouldn't
Exactly.
have before. Okay, thank you.
Now that's going to kind of depend on now under the permissions for the roles, security roles. There's one that says do not limit to patients served. They would, anybody that might need access to people's charts that they have not seen or they don't have a scheduled visit for, they would need that option, that do not restrict to schedules or to patients served, because the only way those patients will show up for them to have access to them is if they have a visit assigned to them. Otherwise, they will not see those patients at all. So there may be, sometimes with people that are on call, they may need to have access to somebody else's chart. And then again, they can come in here and just edit the service and change it to their name if they needed to. Like I was telling you earlier, you do have the ability to drag and drop these visits. And under the services requested, you can actually drop them anywhere in the calendar. You can move them outside of a week, outside of a month, et cetera. You can move them anywhere you want. If you use them on the, if you use scheduled services, if you plot something inside of an order, if you use a weekly frequency, we're going to limit you to that week. If you use a daily frequency, we're going to limit you to that day. You will not be able to move it off that day. Or on the weekly, you will not be able to move it to the next week, but you'll be able to move it anywhere within that week. So you have that ability. Real fast while I'm here, the other scheduling options that we were, I think, initially leaning towards, but I think the scheduling services would work better. There is the pay only. Now on these, you have to come in here, choose add pay only, pick your associate, and then plot that service right there on the calendar. You can enter that time in, time out right now if you already know it. Again, you only need the date and then the agency, associate, and service if you do it here. You can hit save and continue, or schedule and continue if you're done, or you can hit schedule and add more if you need to add a different service code. So you have this option too. Now these pay-only codes will only go to payroll. They will not go to an invoice, and we cannot add them to a payer because they're pay-only. So they'll be available for all of your patients, and you guys could actually use a combination of those two services. The only difference is if you use the pay-only, it will not go to that charity and keep record of these pay-onlys. It would only do the scheduled services. So you have options, but if you want to really truly keep good count of the amount of money you guys are writing off and whatnot, then you would probably want to stick to all of the schedule services. But you do have this option and you do have this ability, so you guys just tell me if that's what works best for you or not. Now this one, you have to do one at a time. You can only put it in here one at a time. If it's a pay-only code, the font is red, so you can easily see that that's a pay-only code. So those are the two options you have for the grief and bereavement. Again, I still think that it would lean in towards the scheduled services, and writing it off as charity would be better because then you have that information and knowledge. If you do it as a pay-only, you really don't know. I mean, you could use your payroll records, but what if you're paying those clinicians for office time or things like that don't even involve a patient? So you have to, take that into consideration. There's also associate time entry, which it works just like the pay-onlys, but it doesn't have to attach it to a patient. So that's more used for office staff. Well, your agency is going to do something different with the time in, time out, so you guys won't need to even worry about that. But this is what other agencies would do. They just manually put in their time in and time out when they work in the office, or they're on orientation or in services, you know, things like that. They would normally add their time that way. But yours is different, and we're not going to. That's not even in this. It's not quite completed, I don't think. I don't know. JP and I and AJ are all going to have a meeting about the changes for that for your agency, and we'll do that part of it with you later.
Yeah, and just to let everybody on the call know that we will get special time clock training, so we don't have to worry about that at this moment. But as soon as it's ready with Care Efficient, they will give us specific training for the time entry.
Brendan, can you hear me?
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I know we'll get that special training, but is the charting or the service date attached to time clock?
No, it will not be.
Okay, so they won't have to, they can see their client and they can go back in later and chart, and that's not going to affect time clock or anything like that.
Not for you, Stacia, because you're all paid hourly, so you're not paid per visit.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Brendan, can you hear me?
Okay, so I can.
Okay, great. We were having some technical difficulties, so that's why we were so silent. But in regards to the page we're looking at now, the scheduling page, once a caregiver uses her app and clocks out of her shift, will that resonate here? Will we get a kind of a different color or some kind of notification when we're looking at this that they've clocked out?
We should defer that until we get the whole piece in place for you guys,
Okay.
and we should cover that again later, because I'm not 100% sure exactly how things are going to overflow with each other, because there is going to be some clocking in, and there is going to be some time in and time out on these service notes.
Correct.
So we'll have to talk about that once we get everything in place, and we'll pick back up on that. Okay. So the other, and really this is the last couple parts that I'm going to show you. From the home page, when the clinicians log in, you're going to see all those visits start populating here as they're assigned to them. And of course, multiple visits on each day if those apply. If you hover over those visits, you can see what service code it is. If there was a scheduled time, you can see also that scheduled time. And so you'll see that information there. Then all you have to do is click on that visit, and what the clinicians are now, this is going to be a little bit different versus using the app out in the field. But I just want to show you, and I'm going to cover that a lot with your field staff and you guys. But as far as entering a service note directly online, which is sometimes easier to do, you do have that option. You just click on the visit, and you're going to see Add Service Note Assessment. You do have other options. You can view, print a blank assessment. This will have a little bit of information on there. Patient information is going to have the patient's name on it, basically, up at the top. So sometimes this would be used if you needed to use print out a paper note to document on paper. I know that's not ideal, but sometimes that has happened where they need to do that. So you do have an option for that. You can have, if they have security permissions to do it, they still have that option to edit the service code again before they even start the service. You can go straight, there's a link to go straight to the patient encounter or straight to the patient's schedule. So we're on the associate schedule now, so you're only going to see your visits, but if we wanted to go to the patient's schedule and see the other disciplines or other clinicians that are assigned to that patient, you could go straight there and view that information as well. These are only available online, not on the app. If it ended up being a missed visit, the visit could be canceled from here as well. But we'll go into greater depth during our clinical training over all those options. So I just wanted to show you, if you do add service note assessment, this is the actual service notes. Oh, and we need I've already just ran into an issue here. Hold on just a second. JP joined us. Hey, JP had a quick question. I told them they were kind of asking a little bit about the scheduling, or not the scheduling, the time in, time out changes that we're making for them. I told them we're going to have the meeting, me, you, AJ,
Right.
and
We haven't really
involved.
had the training, and my staff hasn't really been trained on all that yet. We're waiting for all the release documents. Craig's putting that together. So, I mean, you will be able to use your time in and time out from your home screen. I just don't have all the details on that yet.
Yeah, because they were asking a little bit about their time in, time out for that, and then how that interacts.
Well, yeah, but
with
this
the
is
time in and
transition
time out
training,
for,
right? We need to concentrate on transition training. Yeah.
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 But we'll look into this. So hold on a second.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
So this is transition training for caregivers and for grief and bereavement, is what this is titled. But observing today, I feel like I learned more about how to schedule shifts, if that's the right way of putting it. So is the people who are on here, Stacia and John, are you guys already confident in how you're going to transition your patients from McKesson into Care Efficient? And did I miss the earlier one?
Yeah, this is the second training.
Okay, so they already know how to put all their patients in and stuff. Okay. Thanks.
That's part two. We're already putting in a little bit on the caregiver end. So we've already started that process.
We don't have the caregiver notes.
Okay, thank you.
This is Stacia, and I've just been waiting. So perhaps I can have a conversation with someone how we might be able to start entering clients into the system. But my understanding is the grief and bereavement program has kind of been on hold. Am I correct? Should we be entering clients into something?
So, Stacia, because, and we can talk offline, everybody doesn't need to be part of this conversation, but yes, that is true. We've kind of said, just hold on. You have a much smaller client pool that you need to put in, and you're going live later than everybody else. So we absolutely, should start in the next 2 weeks. By April 1st, you should start. But we can talk offline and kind of work on a schedule.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so once they click on the visit, add their service note, again, they have the option to change that code if needed, if they have permissions to do that. Then they're going to pick their note. Right now, we only have this caregiver visit note in there, so. And then they'll hit continue. And I just want to show you how to do this manually so you can see how those task actions work. So that basically it goes back to the question that we have with the caregivers, grief and bereavement, whether or not you want to use the task actions and goals the way it works in the system. Otherwise, I will create that service note and have the fields for you to enter that information freehand. So it's going to be up to you guys. So in every single service note that we have, there is going to be this header and supply section. This is going to show you the service date, and this is where you, even though we have scheduled times or potentially have scheduled times, and even potentially EVV times, they still have to put their actual time in and time out here. So they'll come in here. Typically, when they first start the note, they'll put their time in and then go through their visit and document all the things they need to document. Then at the end of the visit, they'll come back to this section and put in their time out. And it's going to work the same on the app offline. It's just going to look different. They're going to have the option to choose electronic signature. As long as they have touchscreen devices, they can use this option. Otherwise, their other three options are not required: paper signature or signature on file. If you choose electronic, then you would need to enter that enter signature as soon as the patient's ready to sign, and then it brings up this little window for that patient to sign, and then they just choose accept. Okay, so I'm just kind of showing you that while I'm already here. However, the task actions, that care plan that we created, you're going to see those in every note, and this works for every discipline, for every care need that you guys have even in the home health, and if we choose to use this in the grief and bereavement as well. They're only going to see those interventions that that you guys created for them. So they're not going to have an entire list of everything they may or may not do. This is what that caregiver is assigned to do. So they can't really mess up their documentation and document on something they shouldn't have, or not documenting on something they should have, vice versa. So, but this is how it works. They'll come over here and they'll choose a response that they either completed it, not applicable to this visit, or patient caregiver refused. And these responses are customizable. We can add different ones and change these in the settings if you want. But they would just choose, whatever is applicable, and then they would document towards each one of them. Now, for a caregiver, they'll just document whatever they normally would document towards it. For skilled care, they would document, how did they tolerate that intervention? If you chose that it wasn't applicable, why not? Maybe because you spent all your time, or the patient was exhausted after these other interventions and you just couldn't do it, they couldn't handle it. You could document that information here, or if the patient caregiver refused, you can, give follow-up comments on that. So that's kind of how the interventions. Now, on the skilled side, they will see goals as well. So grief and bereavement, I saw that you guys do have goals as well. If we have those in the settings, and those would pull into your notes as well, and then you can tell and then those drop-down boxes for goals will be more for they'll say not met, in process, or met is basically the options that you'll have for the goals, and so you can address that. Some agencies have responses that will say, they've met 10 to 20% of the goal, 21 to 30% of the goal, 31 to 40, so on and so forth. Some of them use scales in the responses. That's up to you, or you'll be able to document the progression towards those goals right here in the comment section as well. Now, in the skilled side, mainly for the grief and caregiver bereavement, they have the option to actually view previous goal documentation as well. So they can just look back on the last note and see that, we were at 30%. Now we're going to be at like 40%. So you do have the option to look back at other notes as well. So,
Brendan,
yeah.
Quick question. I'm sorry. So with the interventions, we weren't able to communicate with you early on, but you had mentioned we can prioritize which interventions we want to be focused on by our team. Can we set that setting here locally, or does that have to be shared with you all, and then you put those in as priorities?
You can do it, or I can do it. Since you guys don't really know how, I really don't mind just doing it for you. But all we got to do is go up here to the task action responses right here, and then we can add the ones that we need.
So can I send you email you a list, because we want really our focus to be on ADLs. So can I send you that list after the meeting?
Absolutely. And I apologize. You were referring to the care need levels, the priority level. So that's actually here, not the responses. I was showing you the wrong one. But if you send me that, I'll be glad to add those levels in here for you. Now, just so you know, these levels will be available for everybody. Home health, hospice, everything. However,
so can we code them? Can we code them so that this may need to be an internal conversation, Brendan? So if they are codes that are specific to caregivers, then we maybe need to use a naming convention so that everybody recognizes those are caregiver care levels and only to be selected by caregivers.
We would have, in the description, we could put, CG, high, medium, low, whatever you guys want. We can put the CG for caregiver in front. We could put the word hospice for the hospice and home, or HH for home health. We can, but we would have to do it in the description of that level.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So that was just the wrapping up the last of the transition training. since we got hung up on the care needs that last time. So that's all I have for you today. But do you guys have any other questions while we still have a little bit of time?
Brendan, just a quick question. I may be getting off subject here about payers, but in McKesson, the system we're currently running, it does not allow us to select two different payers for the same day. So if we had a caregiver, two caregivers going out, part of the day that was going to be private pay or self-pay, and then the second half was going to be one of our subsidized care programs or grant programs where the client would be billed. It wouldn't allow for that. We had to do some finagling in our accounting department for that, our billing department. Can CareFishing handle something like that?
They can, definitely
Awesome.
can. Now, the only time that I recommend where you can use two payers would be in your scenario. If you had somebody with skilled care and non-skilled care, so if they were on home health and you guys were providing caregiver services, in those scenarios, it is honestly the best way to do it is to run two charts, two patient encounters, one with one payer and one with the other. And that's mainly comes down to rules and regs as far as you got to follow the rule of the most stringent payer, which so if it's a CMS type payer, you'd have to have Starter Care Oasis and all that good stuff. And the problem arises when you have to discharge them off mainly when you discharge them off the skilled care, because you have to discharge that patient to be able to get the discharge Oasis in there and things like that. Well, then you'd have to either put the patient back in just for the non-skilled care, or there's some other ways of working around that, but it's very difficult. So if it's just dealing with the caregivers like that, then you can absolutely do that. I don't think that it would be a problem at all. You just have to be careful when you're when you're scheduling those services that you schedule it using the correct payer, because that's where everything starts. If you schedule it with the wrong payer, wrong service code, it's difficult to catch that even all the way up to the verification. They may not know that it's incorrect on the verification process. They do have the ability to correct it, but if they don't know it and they verify it, it's going to go to the wrong payer when you don't want it to. So scheduling is super important if you have multiple payers in that account or encounter.
And on that, I mean, and AJ will do a separate I mean, we do talk about scheduling again. First of all, I mean, during the clinical training, but then AJ is also going to go over scheduling when we meet with the administrative staff to go over, because it is important to schedule them correctly, and it's just much better to start them out the correct way and making sure. And it is driven by payer too, because again, if you select when you're scheduling, it lets you select a payer, and it only lets the services that payer has approved based on your requirements. It'll only let you schedule those services. So it's driven by that, and she'll go over that with you. But then if it does get to billing, or if it doesn't get caught at Verify, I mean, if they make a mistake at Verify services, it can be corrected if it gets caught before the bill goes out. But even once the bill goes out, although it takes more time as far as your billing process, but those all can be corrected after the fact. It just takes a little more time, and it delays your cash coming in. But I mean, you're not really locked in once you make that mistake. I mean, there are different places throughout the application where you can correct all of that.
Tree mentioned if they're using their phone and they use voice text in the comment section, if their phone allows that and has an app that'll allow that, then they would be able to do that. Of course, they just need to be very careful. I've heard horror stories where, they were doing voice text driving down the road with the radio on, and it picked up the radio lyrics to the song, and it wasn't appropriate, and that didn't get caught and ended up being in their note. So there is different apps out there for voice to text that is available. I've never tested that using our app, so I don't know. It would depend on that type of app and how everything works, and we've never done any testing specifically for that, so I can't guarantee it would work. But it does when you're using the online version. I know agencies have done that before.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are, I mean, we have done a little bit of testing with Dragon Speak and not a lot because, again, even though that's the recommended one for CMS is Dragon Speak for voice to text for clinicians, it's still not perfect. I mean, there's just no foolproof method for voice to text.
So, any other questions?
Nothing from caregivers. Thank you, Brendan, and I'll get that list to you of ADLs that we want to prioritize.
Okay, sounds great. No hurry. I'll get it taken care of as soon as I get it.
I have, if grief and bereavement doesn't have any questions, I have a question from.
Well, I'm going to
totally
save
different.
my questions for, I'll save my questions for later. So thank you.
Stacia, if they're a transition question, let's ask them now during the transition training.
I don't even know what they are yet. Some of it, Brendan, I'll send you some typical goals for the grief and bereavement program. But if we're not I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll talk later. Thanks.
I just think it's hard for Stacia to ask questions when she's not completely set up to see all the walkthrough yet. So that's kind of where we were at with the care plan, and Brendan fixed that for us. So today was really useful, but I don't think Stacia's quite there yet.
Absolutely. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, we still need to work on that. The service notes again. And now, just one question for you, Stacia, do you think the care needs or task actions, do you think that would work for your service note to get those entered in the settings so that you can make it patient-specific in the orders tab? Or do you want it to be free text like what you sent me? I can do it either way.
Yeah, I think that what I sent you, some of that is of course, free text. The problem is things aren't unified when you're working with people in mental health. There's a lot of, you can't just click certain boxes that apply to everyone. So right. I think as in any mental health setting, there's free text. There's, a subjective and an objective. And as you saw in the notes I sent you, there are things that relate to one's physical, emotional, spiritual, social, right, that they can check. But there has to be free writing. And a treatment plan, that looks different for everyone who comes in here. It's not somebody coming in with a medical issue and this is how you handle it. It's, unique to each person. So that's why the treatment plan is a fill-in, because not everyone's going to need the same thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was looking at, or I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking it might work for you, but that's if you kind of have specific things that you're working towards. Of course, things are always fluid, even in the home health side or any kind of health care. It's always changing. So we have that ability to make those changes to those interventions and tasks and goals. However, and I agree, it sounds like in the mental health, it's just so fluid, you need the free text. So I'll work on both.
I can do something where I send you what are typical grief goals, but as far as interventions, there's way too many. And so that would have to be, we wouldn't have a drop down or particular ones. But maybe you and I can talk.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe once you get the service notes that Stacia's already sent you built, then we could do just a grief and bereavement specific session.
Absolutely. I think we
that would be great,
because
I feel like I'm asking questions that apply to no other service. I listen and then I get more confused. So anyway, I appreciate everything, and I look forward to when that's up and running and I can take a look. So thank you very much for all the hard work.
You're welcome. And just so while you're here, I do have pulled up what it's going to look like. So I've got it mostly done, but I need to finish up a little bit on the, this one's on the progress note. Of course, we have all these free text boxes and stuff. multi-select. Now, since the only thing that's a little bit weird is I can go horizontal, or excuse me, horizontal with these answers, like I did down here on the general eye effect. But when there's a lot of them like this, they typically need to go in a vertical format. So it does look a little bit different, but it's going to have the same questions and same answers available for you. And then there's a lot of free text, multi-line text boxes in here, so you can type in anything you want. Again, I'm pretty much done with this one note, but looks like I need to get these 4 responses added, and then I'll send this to you when I'm done, so you can kind of, look it over, give me some final approval or any other thoughts or recommendations, and I'll make those final changes for you. And I'll work on that free. Okay.
That looks
and
great.
I'll work on that other 2 today as well, so hopefully I can be completely done with those, and we'll just go from there.
All right. Well, so I look forward to that. Thank you so much. So I'm going to sign off. I have a 10 o'clock client. So bye, guys.
Okay. Thank
Bye,
you.
Stacia. Thanks.
Bye, Stacia.
Any other questions?
Well, I don't have questions about this. I don't know if I'm allowed to take the last 2 minutes for a totally different subject. Is that okay?
I can try to help you. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see what.
So I took some more of the tutorials last night. I'm a physical therapist. I'm also administrator at Livingston. But because I'm trained as a PT, I'm taking the PT test. And just, I had a question. Is it a hard stop if you need to put a patient on hold because they were admitted to the hospital and you need to do the transfer oasis? I understand you can't get a rock in unless you do the transfer first. But currently our process is someone else does all the transfers to the hospital, not the clinician who finds out. So is that possible? Or is it if you put the patient on hold and say the patient's in the hospital, do you then have to do the transfer to the hospital for them?
Well, typically, I mean, anybody can do it. Let me see if we have, let me just do this.
Sorry, I need to jump off. I have a 10 o'clock with JP, so I'm going to, sorry, with JP, with Amber, so I need to jump off.
I was going to say, I didn't think we had one.
Yeah, sorry. No, we have an 11 o'clock, JP.
11 o'clock. And I was going to actually reach out. Are we still going to meet? Because you weren't sure if we were going to, are you still going to?
I think we need to meet. We have quite a few pay rate questions. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, sure.
Rate,
all right, I'll
payroll.
see you then.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you then.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, all right.
Caregiver's just signing off too. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you. You guys take care. So I'll just answer that real quick. There is the ability to do a standalone OASIS. Typically, most of your transfers are going to be standalone, and some of your discharges may be standalone if you weren't able to, visit the patient for that OASIS data collection or assessment. So what would normally happen is, and I'm going to go through this in way greater detail when we go through the training, but but typically you're going to.
We took the test last night. That's why I'm asking the question. It triggered something in my head, like, wait a second, does this mean that the person who finds it has to do the OASIS, the transfer form?
No, anybody will be able to. Now, I can't place the patient on hold because you don't have any facilities, apparently, in the facility section of the resources, so it's not going to give me an option. You do have to choose a facility whenever I guess we can, it's still going to ask you to do that. Or we could do patient request, we can do it. Yeah, when you do admitted to facility, when the patient goes in, when you find out, this would be the first step, place patient on hold, come in here and choose admitted to facility, and you'll have a list of your facilities and different clinics and hospitals to choose from. Since we don't have any facilities, I can't show you that part of it, but I can still show you the rest.
So I did have another question about that too, before you go forward, if you don't mind. Is, lots of times we'll have our clinician call and like, I'm coming out for our scheduled 10 o'clock and they're like, oh, my dad went to the ER last night. So, but they don't know the patient's been admitted to the hospital yet or not. They just know that they went to the ER. So would your recommendation be that at that point just put them on hold, and then once you find out that they were actually admitted, then go back into the same spot and then change it to admitted to facility?
You do, well, no. Once you put them on hold, whether you do it as patient request or admitted to facility, that's going to put them on hold right then. Now, you will have the ability to go ahead and get that transfer oasis in there, and then there's another step as far as when they come back, when you reactivate their patient, you can remove all those scheduled services. So what a lot of agencies will do when the patient goes into the hospital is they'll decide, do we want to just move this visit to tomorrow and try to see them tomorrow, and follow up? Are they still in the hospital? Were they in OBS and now they're a full admit? Things like that. So you can kind of keep tracking them because that patient's still in an active status, and you can kind of push those visits down. Now, of course, once they get to the end of the week, then you're going to have to, make a decision. Are you going to make that visit a missed visit, or are you going to go ahead and just get that transfer oasis put in there? So let me.
Okay, so that's an
I'm
interesting
just
concept. We don't usually do it that way, and I want to do it. I'm not interested in doing it the way that we currently do it. I'm interested in doing it the care efficient way. So if I hear you correctly, your recommendation is the clinician calls, oh, you can't come, my dad's in the ER, I don't know if they're admitted. Your suggestion is just move all of the different disciplines. See, reason we do it now would be that automatically put in a note to the whole team so that not everyone's going, not everyone's calling. They, they see that the patient may have been admitted to the hospital. So we put in a ER/hospitalization note, and we click all of the team members, so-and-so went to the ER last night, we're not sure of the status yet. You're saying, if I hear you correctly, is just move all the scheduled visits to the next day and then follow up with the patient.
Typically, that's, you have the option. You can do a missed visit right then and there, but, where I came from, we always try to capture those visits. So we would try to move them. We would not allow a missed visit in the beginning of a week unless it was like, the patient was 3 times a week for wound care, and then obviously we can't reschedule the Monday visit. So, in those scenarios, it's going to be vary by patient. But yeah, so some agencies will just go ahead and do a missed visit. But if you place the patient on hold, it will hide all the visits from the associates' calendars. So all of those scheduled visits, they won't see them anymore because it's going into the hospital. Now, do you guys have somebody in the office that tracks those patients to see if they're full admit and when and they're in the office? Yeah, they could just move the visits. If they're the ones doing it, they can drag and drop those visits to the next day, follow up again, and then do the same thing. But once they find out, yes, they're a full admit, then they definitely need to go in here, or even at the end of the week. This may happen in the beginning. Maybe they were admitted on Friday. You're going to have to do a missed visit if you had that visit on Friday, unless you wanted to go on that Saturday, and they're probably not going to be out of the hospital on Saturday. So yeah, you could place the patient on hold. It'll hide the visits, especially since you have somebody in the office that are tracking them. If you had a field staff, if you were making your field nurse do it, then it'd be helpful for them to have it on their schedule so that they can see, okay, I need to follow up on this patient, and then determine, what the next step is at that point.
I see.
But once you
we don't.
Go ahead.
Well, sadly, our
yeah.
clinicians, they don't necessarily follow their schedule. That's on their schedule. So us hiding it, it wouldn't be like, oh, I don't have that person. They would still think they do. So that's why we send everyone a click to let them know the person's in the hospital. So we still have to do that. But, I understand what you're saying up until this point. So now I find out the patient's definitely admitted to the hospital, so I'm going to choose admit to facility. I understand the drop-down text because I saw it in the tutorial and you put it in there. And then it came up that you had to do a transfer to a hospital oasis. That's where my question comes in. Will it be?
Okay, that's exactly the next step. So once you get them on hold, now typically you'll write an order, transfer summary, or just other interim order. Let the physician know, hey, patient was admitted to the facility on this date for this reason, and that's going to justify all those missed visits that you would have on that hold time. So now you're accounting for those. So you'll get your hold order in there. And then the other thing you're going to do, and it depends on who you guys want to have do it, but they're going to come on the orders tab. They're going to hover over the action item menu next to the Oasis, or the 485 in the time frame that they're looking for. So you're going to have maybe more than one 485 in there, but if we're adding them the transfer within this time frame, this is the one I'm going to hover over, and then I'm going to choose Add Oasis. Now, since we did it a different way, you're not going to have the correct options, but you would have, when you place the, I guess I don't have, I future dated, the hold date was the problem. Let me backdate it to, and it may still give me an issue because I did that before the episode, yeah. So it's looking for.
I understand the concept here. Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, you'll just pick that Oasis, hit save. It'll bring them into the Oasis. Now, whoever's entering this can go ahead and enter the information. Now, it does ask for the MO80 question here, so you do need to pick which discipline is filling this out. You know, it should still be an RN, PTO, TST. But any of them could come in here and enter that. And then just fill it out completely, and then they'll be able to, you know, you can either save and close it if you want to work on it later. If somebody else needs to go in there and double check it and make sure it's good and they need to approve it, then you can just save and close and they can come into it to approve it. So it can be managed in several different ways. But that's how you do a standalone Oasis. Where there's not a visit involved, which is almost 99.9% of the time when it's a transfer.
Right. So my question, and the reason I'm asking is we have a meeting today on processes and how we do things compared to how Care Efficient does things, and we're trying to, you know, see where we differ. So where we differ is I'm the clinician. I find out the patient, let's just say I find out for sure the patient was admitted to St. John's last night. All I do is enter a note and I send it to a different person who then goes in and does the transfer Oasis form. I don't have to do it. We have someone in the office who does that. So that process may need to change. It may be me, Jamie, I'm a PT, let's just say, and I find out the patient is in the hospital. I will have to go in, it sounds like, and do this transfer Oasis. Would that be your recommendation? I mean, it only takes a minute or two to do, but our clinicians don't have to currently do it. We have someone else who does it. And the fact that you can't start a rock unless your transfer Oasis is done makes me a little nervous because, you know, sometimes people get behind on doing the transfer Oasis. The transfer Oasis isn't done yet, and the patient's coming out on a rock. And if I understood the Care Efficient way, we wouldn't be able to do the rock unless the transfer is done first, right?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a logical time point sequence in here for all of the Oasis. So not only do you have to add them in order. Now you can just get it in there and hit save and close. And that's all it's going to really take. Somebody can fill it out later, get it approved later if needed. It just needs to be in place and absolutely be in place. That transfer would need to be in there before you try to reactivate that patient. Because once you reactivate the patient, and that being said, two things that I'm thinking about.
Now, when you say in place, does it have to be completed or it just needs to be that the transfer form exists?
The Oasis just needs to be added. It does not have to be completed. It just it doesn't have to be a single question filled out on it. It just has to be here.
That's good to know.
As long as it's here, you're good to go. Now, the other thing you were talking about, the process that you had as far as filling out a hospitalization form or whatever it was, we don't have a hospitalization form in here, but we do have the ability to do patient forms. And we could get one, you know, in here. Now, there is like an incident report, usually that's in here. But otherwise, I mean, we could create one, but they wouldn't necessarily know that you added it here. So you still may need to send them a message. Now, we do have an unread messages. It's kind of like an email type thing, sort of, where you can send, HIPAA. The unread messages link that we have is HIPAA compliant. It's in care efficient, so all that PHI stays in care efficient, so you're safe that way. But you can send them a message, hey, so-and-so was admitted to the hospital, and then transfer OASIS needs to be added, things like that.
So how we do it now is, let's say I know the patient went to the hospital, and now I'm not being a physical therapist. I'm a director, because that is what I actually am. So I sometimes open up the transfer OASIS form, and I put the person who normally does it, her name is Brenda. She's an RN. I create the form, and I put it in her name, so it shows up in her incomplete document, so she knows she has to do it. Is that something that you could do in here, that it would show up in her work basket, that, there's a transfer OASIS that she needs to complete?
No, not exactly. No, there is not.
Okay, so if I create it, it will go in my name then?
No, on that.
Right?
Well, on this, it's just going to show you who performed it. The MO80 date, whoever or question, it's going to show. So if that clinician was different than you could still choose her name, but over here in the reviewed approved by, it will show your name, which is just an audit trail for you guys.
Right, but for Brendan.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. But with the scenario that she wants to do, if she goes in, adds the transfer OASIS, she selects the clinician that's responsible for that, and she saves and closes it. It's going to show she added it, who's responsible. It'll create a work basket item for that, and they will get they're not going to get a notification, but they need to work their work basket items and make sure that that's completed. Right?
True, but it would be a little bit difficult because the only work basket item you're going to get from an OASIS is the fact that one exists and is not in a locked
status. It's going to say OASIS, yeah, right. There's going to be a missing OASIS record. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not going to be specific. I just don't think it's going to help her in her scenario because it's not going to be specific for that clinician. It's not going to, so let me kind of, wrong agency. I believe it's this one. So there will be an item under the clinical record that says OASIS record has not locked, but that typically works more for the office staff that need to go in there and follow up and lock these OASIS.
Because the other one's going to be tied to the service note if it was a service note for an incomplete service note with an OASIS. So we don't have one for just an incomplete OASIS. We don't have a work basket item for just...
No.
See, and that's why, because when you're doing that, and only on the transfer ones, for a standalone OASIS, because you're normally doing a standalone, that's what we really need to do is look at putting a correct. I know Todd will kill me if I had another work basket item, but that's what I'm thinking. Because again, just with the transfer OASIS in that scenario, that should just say it's an incomplete standalone OASIS that needs completed. I know the other one does it on the service note if it's incomplete. But if it's a standalone, we should actually have a separate one. But anyhow, yeah. So I guess you'll need to put a process in place, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to, we're open to changing our processes if there's something that works better. So but I'm trying to think through, so for example, that hospitalization note that Brendan was talking about, why we create that is there's someone in our organization who's responsible for providing to wherever that patient went the transfer summary. They send the med list, the last clinical note. That's one of the conditions of participation, that you need to do that if the patient's still in the facility within 48 hours of learning of it. So that's what that hospitalization note is. We send it to the person who's responsible, and then that person tracks when they're getting out of the hospital, do we have a rock order, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I'm sharing.
Well, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brent. So is this when they're in the hospital and you're not sure that they're being admitted still?
No. Now so I know they're being admitted. I'm the clinician now that finds out. But let's just say I call and they say my dad was admitted to St. John's last night. I'd start a hospitalization note in notes, and there's an F10 text, we call it, like it's a populated headers that you have to fill out. What hospital, what date, why, has the MD been informed? Because that, me, the clinician who finds out, it's my job to call the doctor's office and say, your patient was admitted to St. John's last night due to CHF exacerbation. And then there's, you know, 2 other questions. I can't remember what they're off the top of my head. That note gets sent to my person at my organization, who will then go in and do the transfer to the hospital OASIS. They will gather the information that needs to go to St. John's on that patient. They will also then track that patient to see when they're coming out. Does the discharge planner at the hospital know they're on service with Livingston and they want to come back to Livingston? All those sorts of things, so that then they come back to Livingston for the rock. So that's our process now. I'm just sharing that with you, and I just want to know how I explain that to you would work in care efficient. And when I was taking the test last night, that's what triggered me in thinking we might need to change our process, which is okay if we have to, but I just need to know.
Sure. No, I mean, and we appreciate that, because, I mean, a lot of you do have to change processes, and that's some of the hard stuff to do sometimes. But I just want to make sure we don't already have some. So, again, Brendan, though, once they put them on, they do their transfer summary, which notifies the doctor. As soon as they put the patient on hold and it takes the visits off the calendar, the associates, all the staff, the field staff, get a scheduling notification of all the changes. They get a notification that there's been a change to their schedule. And it'll tell them that the scheduling, that the patient was placed on hold.
Exactly. That is one of the other things I was actually fixing to tell you, that you will get a notification when a patient's status changes from, you know, active to hold, from hold to active to discharge. There will be a notification to that staff to let them know that, hey, this patient was placed on hold. So they will get that initial notification there. But it's not going to have that form that you're talking about with those questions that they need to track. So that would need to be a little bit of legwork on their end as well.
I'll talk about
keep
today
following
in our
up with
meeting. I'll talk about today in our meeting and see what we come up with. And then I did a lot of the tests. You know, I'm doing the PT one, but all the text says nursing, a nursing visit, a nursing visit. That's just interchangeable with whatever discipline you are, right? I'm imagining the same tutorial, the same test exists in RN, PT, OT, speech for certain topics, right? You guys just put in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much all going to be the same. It's just, yeah. The only thing, of course, that's going to be different, the service notes are definitely going to be patient-specific or discipline-specific. And then you have, what else was I thinking? All the other processes are going to be about the same, because they still have the option, you know, PTO, TST, all can do OASIS. So they'll have those same processes if they do the OASIS. And then writing orders and everything else is all going to be the same. The only thing that might be a little different is like the LPN or home health aide, because they're way more limited on what they can and can't do in the system. They can still write orders.
When I send up the note to the therapist, you know, there's, I don't know if you're aware of this, there's always a little bit of friction between the disciplines, like, oh, you know, why do you say nursing when you mean therapy? And, you know, we have our own disciplines, blah, blah, blah. So I just like to preemptively state, you're going to be taking tests. It's going to say nurse, fill in therapist. And I just want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. Okay, that's all. And I'm not making a big deal about it. I just wanted clarification about it. And then I took a screenshot because I was confused on this one about for the resumption of care. It says, confirm that the service code is for resumption of care. Note, if you make a mistake and add the wrong service code, your office can change this later. Then right below it, it says, note, if you add the wrong service note, the office cannot, in all caps, change this later, and you will have to delete the service note and lose any information contained therein, including the patient's signature. So that confused me because it's right after it. So what am I missing?
That's 2 different things. You're talking about a service code, which is how it's going to be billed and paid, and then you have the service note. The service note. And so what happens in that rock scenario, we see it all the time. If they don't have the transfer OASIS in there and they go to add an OASIS integrated assessment, their only option they're going to have is the other follow-up because they don't have the transfer in there. And so if they were to add an OASIS integrated as another follow-up, we cannot change it. And that goes with any service note, not just your OASIS notes. But if they document the wrong service note, we can't change it. We can't just flip it to a new note. We have to delete it so that you can redocument.
Yeah, because it's different. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that question.
So, and I'm sorry, and this is Jamie.
Last night, I was like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
This is Jamie.
This is Jamie, right?
Yeah,
This is Jamie. Yeah. Okay, because I see all the test things coming in there, and I know we talked yesterday about that. So and again, so the reason that we do all of that is the thing, just like where we require that transfer OASIS to be in there because we don't want to allow you to add the resumption of care without the transfer because that could be an audit issue. So we do everything we can to keep you in compliance. So again, it puts a little more responsibility on your field staff because your field staff, even if you're trying to do the transfer or you're trying to do the resumption and this person never put the transfer in. So you have to go back to them, and it becomes a learning opportunity because from a compliance standpoint, we're trying to make life easier for an administrator when a surveyor walks in. Where's my transfer OASIS? We never did one, and we added a resumption of care.
We got written up for being out of sequence, and, you're allowed to only be within certain percent. So I don't have any issue with it. I'm just trying to make sure that we incorporate the right way. And then it says on the bottom when you're done taking the test, it says interactive tutorial or interactive video. When I clicked on it, it was just really the same slides but in PowerPoint fashion. So it's not really interactive, right? That's not correct? You know what I mean?
You say, so it's but on the PowerPoints, and again, we're just still implementing all of that, so I don't know that Debbie has them all done, but they should be interactive PowerPoints where you can go in and click on certain things in the PowerPoint and complete them. Like it'll prompt you to answer something in the Porpoint. Yeah.
All right.
Now they're not all done. There may be some missing ones, but that's the way it's designed to work, and things do break. I mean, so it could be that, as we add new things, it does break something else. So if you know specifically which one, if you would let us know, because they should have an interactive tutorial with them, yes.
Okay, let me go back in. I'll do it, but I don't need to get you guys on the phone. Okay, I'll do it myself later and see it. I did it last night, and I didn't see that it was interactive. I just saw it said that, but it just looked like a PowerPoint. But I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Okay,
it may not have been, but it should be.
Okay, that's good. So
we want them to be,
getting started is probably the same for all the disciplines, correct? Regardless of what role you have, when you go into getting started is going to be the same for everybody, I'm guessing.
As far as the logins and the setups and everything?
Yeah, well, in getting started, sign-in process, apply signature, editing the 45, addressing QA.
All of those are all the same. Those are all interchangeable, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then under expand your knowledge would be where it's more specific to a discipline. Yes or no?
Well, not even that it's specific to a discipline. If you want to learn more about the patient's chart, what those getting started with the roles, we're just trying to say, gee, I'm out in the field and I don't know what to do. So this is what's going to get me started here with that. But then if you really want to go in and once you've got that and you want to learn more, like if you want to learn more about, there's a lot of stuff on that patient chart. So we've added more things to that. So it's just and expanding your knowledge base on some of the other things that are available.
Okay, I guess I'm
but not necessarily pertaining to their day-to-day activity.
Okay, so
sense?
This says physical therapist, and then it has all the things underneath it. I have a feeling, which I just figured out myself, but I could go in as an SN, and what's under getting started and expand your knowledge is going to be exactly the same.
Yes.
Right? These aren't
the expanding your knowledge is going to be the same because it's going to explain the chart. go over
Right.
the patient,
And
you know,
so
the whole
there
patient
isn't
encounter
anything more
record.
specific for physical therapists?
No,
We
nothing
all
is
really-
truly
okay.
drilled to actually train them on
Okay.
physical therapy or anything, what their process is, yeah.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, thank you so much, guys, and I
Okay.
appreciate you giving me this extra time.
No problem.
Okay, have a good day.
No problem at all.
Okay.
You have
All
a
right,
great day. We'll
thank
talk to you
you.
soon.
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.